It is the 2nd of January 2025, and I have had a number of people express to me that their New Year's resolution is that they are going to go to their first Old World event, or maybe their first Warhammer event overall. You can break the process down into 4 steps. The first step is timeline and or picking the event you're going to go to. The second step is your preparation. The third step is your expectations. And the fourth step is actually going to the event and how things are going to be when you get there. This video is going to aim to make the slightly nerve-wracking process of going to your first event a lot more manageable. We're going to break it down in 4 steps as to how I think you should approach going to your first event. Something to consider as well is what sort of event do you want to go to? Do you want to go to a smaller 1-day event, or do you want to go to a bigger 2-day event? 1-day events are a great way to dip your toes in, but maybe you want to go straight into it and go straight into a 5-game 2-day event. A lot of the time, this will depend on what you've got available to you and when events are and sort of timelines. But both are fantastic. So how do you find an event to go to? This is the probably most difficult step if you're not plugged into the normal groups that I would find events through. The first and most obvious way is to have a look on Facebook. There are a few groups that are called Old World event groups, or if you're in a country like Australia, there might be a specific Australian group where you can just, it's all encompassing. We've got events there. You've got people posting their models, all that good stuff. So what you want to do is just search in your Facebook bar, Warhammer Old World events, filter down to groups on the left-hand side, and you'll see all of these here. The first one we have here is a UK events-based specific Old World group. It's a public group. You're welcome to join that one. Some of these groups are going to be private. That's mostly just to stop spam or other harassment, so there'll be a couple of questions that you ask when you join, but nothing too stringent. This one's a public one for the Old World events. As you can see, if you click the events tab in Facebook, it'll take you to all of the upcoming events. You can see here we've got a few of the upcoming weeks, and as you scroll down, you'll see more and more, and you sort of just filter through to this. Either you're looking for a date range, or you're skimming through and going, oh, the Black Country GT. I personally live in Nottingham. That's going to be quite convenient for me to get to. Maybe that's one. Here you can see another example of a group. This is another one. It's a private group, but join. They'll ask you a couple of questions, mostly just to filter out, any spam accounts. Go to the events tab. Again, you can see we've got events here. Or if you're not UK based, for example, I mentioned Australia as well before. You can see here there's a Warhammer the Old World Australia group. This is one of those general purpose groups I haven't joined, not being in Australia myself. And you can see here it's an Australian group for the Old World, and this will have events in as well that you'll be able to filter through. Another great way to find events is to go to the Old World Rankings website. I'll link that one down below in the description. As you can see here, it's a rankings website, and if your region is on the list here, and Gomo is rolling these out as fast as he possibly can. If we go to United Kingdom, you can see on the left here we've got a tab that's for tournaments, latest results, upcoming and finished. If you click on the upcoming, it'll take you to this page where you can see all of the upcoming events. There are 10 here in January. As you scroll down, we've got another 17 in February. We've got 4 in April. This is pulling them directly from Best Coast Pairings, the website where people use it to run their tournaments. So it really depends on whether the organizer has put the event on here, so it doesn't show everything, but it's a good way of seeing events for the future. This goes all the way up to May, depending on how organized your TO is. This is one of the places you can find their events. And then obviously you can just click on the link here. As you can see, Saffron Slam. Saffron Slam, run by Lewis, friend of the channel. It'll take you to BCP, and then on BCP, if you go to it, you can see on the right-hand side, covered up by my face, there is a register for event and an external link. You can click the external link, and that will take you to the website that you're looking for. Again, not everyone is linked up on an external link, but that's one of the ways that you can find tournaments in your area. A third way that you can find events is through Discord groups. This is my personal Discord. Again, close order Discord link down below. This isn't the best place to find events, but people are welcome to promote them. If you're a TO, you're welcome to post them in the events promotion tab. People are able to look through there, pick them up. But there's a few Discords that you can use this for. So again, using Australia as an example, because this is a community that I have sort of some links with. If you go to the Old World Australia Discord link down below, you can see here up at the top, they have 2 events. And there's, Alderman Flames, and also a Warhammer event. Or you can go to the Warhammer Fantasy Battle and Old World Discord, and I will link both of these down in the description as well if you're looking to join more Discords and engage with the community in that way. They have an events tab here, as you can see. Scroll up, people are able to link their events in there. And it varies depending on each Discord as to how active they are in terms of people posting them, but it is one of the ways that you can find events. Finally, you can look at your local game shop's personal website, or if you've got a tournament organizer in the UK, or in the area you're looking at, you can look at their specific website to see if they're selling tickets. So the two that I'd recommend here in the UK, the main one is we've got the TSN Arena, which is Honest Wargamer, Square-based, Rob's events. He's now selling them through his own website instead of having Eventbrite take a cut for him. You can see all of his old world events here listed going forwards, and he's got those well into the future. You can buy tournaments all the way up until the end of May. Another good one is the UKTC website. They are running Old World currently as a side event at their tournaments, so you'll have the big 40k event, and then you've got some side tables for Age of Sigmar and for Old World. And one of the best things about this place is that they are around the country. You can see here, January is Nottingham. Those tickets are all fully sold out, but as you go through, there'll be events, Manchester, the South Coast GT, Sheffield. You can see there's a good range of places. So that's the when and the where sorted. You've picked an event, you've given yourself a good amount of time to get your army all fully built and painted. What's next? Well, now you've got to do the actual preparation. What does that look like? You want to start writing lists. You want to have a vague idea of what you want to take. Obviously, over time, things change. Old World is a game that changes less than some of the other games. So, for example, if you wrote a list now for 40k, but you were going to an event in 6 months' time, you might find that the list isn't particularly great in 6 months' time, and also that the list might not even be legal, depending on how changes come in with points. In the Old World, we have got less of those changes. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some tweaks to the game over the next couple of months, but if you start planning now, you're probably going to be okay for something in, let's say, summer of 2025. So what does the preparation actually look like? Well, the first thing you should do is work out whether you're allowed to use proxies or 3D printed models, because if not, that can really limit the amount of events that you're going to, depending on what you've got available to you. If you are here in the UK, for example, most tournament organisers are going to be okay with 3D prints, as long as you're not going to official Warhammer World events, which is understandable, it's on their premises. But if you have, for example, a 3D printed army and you are planning to go to a Warhammer World event, you'd have to, prep a whole new army to get to that. The second step is to plan out your list, and the way that you plan this out can really vary depending on what you're going with. You might want to make the best list available to you. You might want to make the best list available with the models that you have with limited or no additional purposes. Any of these are fine. Going into your first event, we'll talk about expectations at a later point in the video, but you shouldn't expect to be winning your first event. The main thing is to go learn how things work and have a great time. So even if you go with a less optimal group of models, it's not the end of the world. I personally would recommend having a timeline for when you'd like things to be finished by, but you know yourself better than me. Maybe the way that you work is just sort of picking at things as you enjoy them. Maybe you're going to be more motivated if you go, oh, I'm just going to paint, I fancy painting some infantry, or I could really go for painting a dragon right now. Or maybe you want to split it up by weeks and go, okay, I've got to paint 7 models a week on the timeline I've got. Whatever works for you, just have a rough idea of how you're going to approach it and make sure you try and stick to those plans as best as you can. As for building the list, you might find that the list that you want to play changes over time. So the way that I would do this is to put a list together, get some feedback on it. There are a lot of great communities online where you can ask for feedback. People will tell you, whether they think you should make some tweaks to your list. My Discord is one of those, or there's the various Facebook groups, other Discords as well. Plenty of places to ask for feedback. There's the Fix My List series as well that I run every other Friday. Make use of any of those resources, get a good idea of what you roughly want to bring, and then sort of work out the core units in that. If you're running, for example, let's say, I don't know, a high elf army, bad example because they're going to get some new rules. Let's say you're playing a wood elf army and you really want to take a dragon. Cool, that's fine. Maybe you paint the dragon first because that's something that you've got your heart set on. Maybe you then go, oh, well, I also know that I'm going to need at least 20 infantry with bows, and that's not going to change. That's just something that's core across all of the lists I've been playing. Paint the infantry with bows next. And you sort of go down the list, in my mind, you go down the list in terms of most likely to take to least likely to take. This is something that matters more if you're planning for an event that's 6 months in the future, but it means that when you change your mind and you decide, actually, I'd really like to put this fun thing in my list, it doesn't hurt as much when you go, oh, actually, I've spent the last 2 months painting some models and now I'm not going to use them. Building and painting your models aren't the only prep, though. You also need a variety of game aids, and by that I mean, first of all, dice and tape measure. I would recommend taking 2 tape measures. Why? I've broken tape measures at events before. I've lost tape measures at events before. It's just good to have a backup, and they're one of those things that's surprisingly hard to get hold of if you realise halfway through a day that you need one. Dice, bring more dice than you think you'll need. I'm an absolute fiend for losing my dice, so bring whatever you fancy. Obviously, make sure they're readable for you and your opponent. I wouldn't recommend anything where the pips blend into the colour of the dice. Even if they're your favourite, you want something that you can see very clearly and your opponent can see across the table. This is just good sportsmanship. But bring plenty of dice and ideally a couple of tape measures. On top of that, I'd recommend bringing a printed out sheet of all of the things that you're going to want to do with your army. And that doesn't mean, make sure you move your units. But if you've got models that have abilities that go off in the command phase, then it's worth putting those on a sheet and just using it as sort of a turn-by-turn checklist. The reason for this is obviously you're going to a tournament. Tournament players, despite the negative rap that you might see online, are pretty much across the board pretty friendly, pretty respectful. But you do have to be a little bit tighter in your play than you would be with your friends at home. A lot of people, especially when you mention that this is your first event and you're sort of newer to the game or to the tournament space, are going to be okay with some level of minor takebacks. It's not usually the most cutthroat environment, especially in the early rounds, but it's still good to try and get everything right as possible. If you forget one thing over the course of the game, a lot of the time people are going to be like, oh yeah, don't worry about going back and casting that spell now. That's absolutely fine. This is, if you're forgetting everything, people are going to be less forgiving with it. So set yourself up for success, print yourself out a list where you go, okay, here's my 2 things that I do in the command phase. Here's the spells that I'm going to pick with my Law Familiar that I want to cast. Here's my enchantments. Then we'll go to the movement. Oh, I've got a Conveyance spell. Don't forget to cast the Conveyance spell. Make your life easy. Make yourself a sheet with all of the things that you want on there. And also, ideally, have a printout of all of your stats. A lot of apps or army builders will let you print out just a full list of your army with all of the special rules and the stats and the weapons on there. Having that to hand, even if you don't need it, is just ideal. It means your opponent can say, oh, what have you got on that model? Or what's the stats on that? Instead of having to pull out your phone, go through, you can just look at the printout. You may find using technology easier. I know I personally do, but I'm very comfortable pulling out my phone and getting to the lists because it's something that I do quite a lot. Finally, for prep, we've got the actual logistics of getting to the event. And by that, I mean travel, and if you're going to be staying over, also hotels. Make sure you sort this well in advance. If you're going to have to travel to another city and you're going to book a hotel or an Airbnb or something like that, make sure you do it as soon as possible, get the best prices, make sure that you snag something. If you leave it last minute, you can end up in a situation where you're then scrabbling to find somewhere that's near the venue. Also have a rough idea of what the travel plans are going to look like. If you've decided that you're going to drive there and back, if it's 2 hours each way, that is actually going to be quite a toll on you, and maybe it would be better just to either stay over somewhere, or if that's not logistically viable for you for whatever reason, maybe look at an event that's closer to home. It's also a good idea to know what sort of food opportunities are nearby for your lunch break. However, these events, one of the good things about a tournament is it's usually a little bit of a social event, or a lot of a social event. One of the main draws for me for going to a tournament is meeting new people, and people who have been to events before will often, you maybe around one opponent will invite you out to lunch, or the tournament organizer might say, oh, these are the places in the area. There might be some food trucks. It's usually not difficult to get hold of a lunch at a tournament. Third on the list is expectations. Now, to be clear, if this is your first event, it's very unlikely that you're going to turn up and win the whole thing. And that's absolutely fine. I wouldn't go to an event and expect to win it if I'd only just started playing the game. What you should be expecting, in my personal opinion, is to go to an event, have 5 good games against 5 good people, be a good opponent yourself, try and be as tight with the rules as you possibly can be. Don't worry about making some mistakes as long as you're not trying to take the piss. Just be a good opponent, play against good opponents, and hopefully win some games in there. That is a really healthy set of expectations for your first event. You might be thinking, that doesn't sound like me. I win all my games in my local meta. Something to remember is that when you're playing against players just sort of at home in a gaming club, they might not be super experienced by the level of tournament players, and you might be unpleasantly surprised if you go into an event expecting to win it because you smash all your games at home when you're a big fish in a small pond. That's not to discourage you. I've been routinely surprised by people who I've played against, and I've asked, do you go to tournaments regularly? And say, oh no, actually this is my first one. And then they've given me a very close game, beaten me, or I've beaten them. So that's not to say that if you've never been to a tournament, you can't win games, but just don't go in with the expectation that you're going to win everything. It's a lot healthier to go in and sort of find your feet, work out whether tournaments are something that you want to do. And I'd recommend them. I find them a lot of fun. Fourth and finally, we've got the event itself. First of all, aim to arrive, a little bit early. If doors open at, let's say, 9 o'clock, I would aim to be there for 8:30, especially if it's your first event. You want to make sure that you've got there, there's no issues with traffic, or if you've got any logistical issues that slow you down, you want to make sure you've got a parking space. You just don't want to be rushing. When you're going to something that's new and you may be a little bit nervous about it, the best thing you can do is make sure that you're setting yourself up for success again. Get there early, make sure you're set up and ready to go. You'll get to your event, the doors will open, usually, 8:30, 9 o'clock, depending on what sort of event you go to. Go in, head to either your table, if you've already got a table, or maybe it's a smaller event, maybe they haven't set the tables up to start with, or haven't set the pairings up to start with. Hang around in the general clump of players who are all stood around waiting to be told where to go. It's fairly obvious what to do when you get there. I'm not going to go into the specifics of what you'll do getting set up an event because the TO is going to walk you through it. You're going to go there, they're going to walk you through fire doors. This is when the round starts. This is where the round ends. They're going to probably tell you where the food opportunities are. And if you're at a bigger event, you might have them say, if you haven't got an opponent by this time, come to the front desk and we'll repair you. Everything gets walked through pretty easily. And also, tournament organizers are there to help you. If you've got any questions, do just go and ask them. Across the board, everyone that I've met as a TO has been very friendly and very happy to help, especially as a newer player. It's something that they want to share with the community. It's also their business model. They want you to have a good time. They want you to come back, not only because they want you to do that as people, but it makes sense for them as a business. So don't feel worried about asking tournament organizers questions. That's what they're there for. Something that other games do better than Warhammer, such as Magic the Gathering, is there is a culture of asking a judge or a tournament organizer if you don't know something, or if you have a disagreement, or if you just can't work out how something works. There's nothing wrong with asking the tournament organizer or any event judges, whatever the setup is, a question. You can do it in a non-confrontational way. You don't have to, your opponent shouldn't feel like you're trying to catch them out if you're asking a rules question. It's just fine to make sure that everyone's on the same page. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And it's better to check before something goes wrong. If you disagree about a rule, check at the time. Don't leave it until 2 hours later. Check with the tournament organizer, realize that one of you was right, and then maybe have some hurt feelings there. So I would say if you're at an event and you've got a rules query, proactively check with the judge. Again, they're absolutely fine with you asking questions. It's not a weird thing to do. During the game, I'd recommend sitting down as much as possible. You'll find at the end of the first day that your legs are pretty tired if you're not used to standing all of the time. The way that I personally do it is I sit down as long as I can see what my opponent's doing most of the time, and then I might stand up to watch them roll the dice, depending on what the lighting is, what the dice are like. Not to say that I don't trust my opponents, but this is a competitive element to it, so it's a trust but verify sort of angle that I normally take. So sit down, keep an eye on what your opponent's doing. Feel free to query their rules. Don't do it in a rude way, but if there's something that you don't understand why that something works, feel free to question them on it. You'll reach lunch. You might want to find some food nearby. There might be food trucks, as mentioned. Just work out what you want to do. You might have preconceived notions about how you want to go there and talk to loads of people. after your first game, you might need a little bit of time to decompress. Not that it was a bad game, but maybe you just need to sort of work out what went well, what went wrong, have a little bit of a breather before you can reset and go into the next game. You work out what works for you. If you come with friends, obviously it's good to spend time with those, or you might make friends during your games. Typically, I go for lunch with my first round opponent a lot of the time. It just depends what they're doing, what I'm doing. There's a lot of flexibility. Often, but not always, there'll be some sort of social event after the first evening. This will be some or most of the people going for food or drinks after the event. You absolutely don't have to go, but if you're on the fence about doing it, I definitely recommend it. It's nice to go and talk to people. It's a little harder to have those social conversations during the games, especially if you're, maybe struggling to remember all your rules. So it's just nice to unwind and talk to some like-minded individuals after the event. But if you don't fancy it, it's not weird to not go. Just don't feel like you're intruding. If people invite you, do feel free to go with them. Finally, you'll be at the end of the event. You've played all of your games, whether it's a day one RTT with just 3 games, or maybe you've got a 5-game GT spread across a couple of days. Whatever it is, at the end, there's usually going to be some sort of award ceremony. I'd recommend hanging around for those unless you desperately need to leave for transport reasons. It's just nice to celebrate the people who've done well. There's often going to be something like sportsmanship votes, so even if you didn't win all your games, if you're a good opponent, you might end up winning something anyway. And that's that. That's my overall guide to getting to an event. If it's the first one you're going to in 2025, try not to worry. Have a good time. Tournament goers aren't some sort of terrifying beast. Across the board, most people are friendly. And if they're not, talk to your TO if you have any issues. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the support that I receive from my channel members. Huge thanks to the Grail Knight tier supporters, and also thanks to the Longbeards and the Fnatic tier supporters as well. If you want to support the channel, you too can become a member. The link is down below the video. But if you don't want to give me any money, which is entirely fair enough, I would appreciate the thumbs up, the comments, all of those good things that help me get found in the YouTube algorithm. They really help, and they've been helping grow the channel, and I appreciate the support that I've been given. If you want to see more stuff and just engage in the community we've been building, there is a closer order Discord down below. It's not a VIP Discord, anyone can join, but there are some VIP sections for the YouTube members at Longbeard tier and above. Currently, I'm trying to get 2 videos out a week on a Thursday and a Sunday, and also doing 2 live streams. That's a Tuesday and a Friday. I do stick to this as much as possible. So, check me out. I'll see you around.